Welcome to BrandBusters with your hosts, James Schwinn and Sean Lee. Together, we bust open the latest in CPG, retail media, and life, or whatever the we want. And for today's episode, we got something special cooked up for ya. Extra spicy. Take it away, Sean.
All right, everybody. Welcome to BrandBusters episode 4. Hopefully we got some extra spice for you today. Today we're going to talk about a couple things we saw in the news that we found interesting, which was Lyft's flubbed earnings report. We'll talk about if it was meant to be an accident or just some corporate bullshit. Then we're going to talk about Target's new store brand Dealworthy that James is going to dive into. And then we're going to get into a big topic that I've seen going around that I actually posted about on LinkedIn recently, which is the amount of Chinese sellers that are selling on Amazon and really all e-commerce in the US, just absolutely taking over. Is it a long-term trend? Is it going to go bust? We'll cover it all. And then James and I are just going to talk about how we stay organized with multiple kids and demanding jobs and being an entrepreneur or being in sales. Tips that work for us that may work for you. And hopefully you can learn something and have some fun today. Take it away, James.
Yeah, well, first, the BrandBusters were out in the wild last week for a little Valentine's Day. So Sean was so courteous to invite me to a country concert with Josh Malloy. If any of you know me at all, I do not listen to country typically. I tend to go to metal concerts and hardcore concerts and go in mosh pits and crowd surf and sort, which I'm going to have to retire from soon enough. But ironically, it was the night before I had one of those metal concerts, so very much a clash of cultures. But good time. I think we saw. Did we see Rick Wheeler there? Was he there, Sean?
I think so.
Yeah,
he was there. It was pretty much just James and I, and then a bunch of guys in cowboy boots and black cowboy hats. So a little out of place. And I don't know if I would call it country. It's I would call it outlaw country or Oklahoma, Texas country. So not the stuff you hear on the radio, but you know, my wife won't go with me. James was lucky enough to be the person that would go see some hee-haw music, as my wife likes to call it.
I was the first person that didn't say no. So
correct.
Yeah, hey, I tried to pull out a corduroy shirt and some boots. I at least looked like I was attempting to blend in, but just so the listeners have an idea, like let's just think little snippets of each song. So Josh Malloy's kind of hit breakout single is Porch Light. And the chorus of that goes a little something like this. I'm not going to sing, I'm going to read it.
No, you got to sing it.
No, I will not do that. It's too early. Yeah, it's another hotel room, sleeping on the floor. I'm hurting in the morning from the night before. Paid my dues. I'm leading up the road. I'm coming home, baby. Leave the porch light on. Nice, relatable.
Yeah.
You know, nice like drink a beer song too.
Sounds like I'm around a campfire. Even though I live in suburban Cincinnati, you'd think I'd live in Montana by listening to this.
No tractors, no She Broke My Heart, no blue jeans. So that I think the outlaw country does break away from pop country. Now, shifting gears, Silent Planet's top stream song is called Antimatter, and it goes something like this: Aftermath. Broken promises collapse, bodies lay like shattered glass. Hold the pieces, feel how nothing ever lasts. With tunnel vision fading in, how I thirsted for the end. Pull me closer till I'm over my head. We are broken bodies bound for each other. In the impact, we become antimatter.
Yeah, pretty similar, if you ask me.
Yeah, really similar. No, I know that.
That's what makes the world go around, right? You got some idiots like me that haven't been on a ranch ever in my life and listening to outlaw country, and you got James and mosh pits over here, and then putting on a suit and tie every day.
Yeah. No, I will say, so I have an Excel doc of all the concerts I've gone to, and it's over 150 unique bands, and I definitely have some scars from some of these shows. But I will say, while most people are intimidated by walls of death, which if you've never seen a wall of death before, absolutely go on YouTube, specifically like a Lamb of God wall of death. I have had a concussion and my nose busted open before, but everyone looks out for each other, and it's just one of those nice cathartic experiences where you get to blow off some steam, but in a productive, collaborative way. It's like sports, right?
Yeah, it
Something
sounds like
that.
broken nose, concussions. It sounds like you're describing some entrepreneurship, like my day-to-day running Cincy Browns.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Well, moving on from that, there was some really interesting thing in the news. It really doesn't have to deal with e-commerce, but we thought it would be interesting to all of our listeners out there. And for those of you that left us some great feedback in the Q&A on Spotify, keep doing that. We do read them. I think we got 2 comments that said excellent. I don't really know what was excellent, but I'll take
it.
But recently, Lyft just had their earnings report, Lyft, the ride sharing service, and they released an error in it saying that their projected profit margin increased by 500 basis points, and it should have been 50 basis points. And upon releasing the earnings report, this press release went out, and their stock immediately popped 35% higher. It was their best day since their IPO in 2019. So, question for you, James, like given all you know about kind of corporations and me having worked at P&G at a publicly traded company, do you think this was some intentional corporate bullshit, or do you think it was a true and honest error?
I think nose is a word. Yeah, I market manipulation or just a gaffe. I think it's. I didn't look to see if any executive team members sold off any shares after that pop. So I think let me go research that, and I'll get back to you. I think a couple things. Again, I don't want to. This is no accusation. Again, it could absolutely be an error. I know I've certainly made errors in certain proposals or pitches that I thought were going to completely derail a deal in certain instances, and it was fixable. Now, speaking of market manipulation, like if you go back to GE in 2019, this is not a Harry Markopolos debacle where he is claiming that GE, he generated this 175-page report claiming that GE was out over 39 billion in fraudulent activity without consulting the executive team members, and also there being documentation on Mr. Markopolos being retained by certain hedge funds to potentially help with short sale activity.
Crazy.
But neither here nor there. Listen, I think retail traders and institutional traders these days, and probably for the last 2 decades since the .com bubble burst, care more about the narrative versus the numbers when it comes to the stock. And Scott Galloway actually really encapsulates this really well, especially in like more tech-oriented stocks and innovators, is if you tell a 30-something male he is Jesus Christ, he's inclined to believe you. The tech innovator class has an Achilles tendon that runs from their heels to their necks. They believe their press. So this is, again, we're not taking pot shots here at Lyft. Could be very much an honest mistake, but I think the trend with how volatile and crazy the market's been the last several years since COVID, but absolutely the last probably 2 decades, it's, maybe it was a strategy. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna call some corporate BS and fudgery on this one. I think
Spicy.
Having worked at P&G and having really even small companies, like a press release doesn't get released without at least probably 5 to 10 people reviewing it. So somebody catches that number. Again, may or may not have been completely intentional. Maybe everybody missed it, but somebody should have saw it. Those things get reviewed by the PR firm, by the person that wrote it, by the CEO. Somebody's looking at that thing and probably, wink and a nudge, just let it go out the door. The stock popped 35% when they, in all the algorithms that kind of trade on these immediate pops of news, that's what took it up. When they announced the correction, it only came back down 15 of that 35%. So the stock was still up 20%. And 500 basis points over 50 is a pretty damn big jump. So they still netted probably a lot better than where they would have been if they just said 50 basis points. And I do realize, I feel like basis points, like, why don't I just call it like 0.5% and 5%? But, you get the deal. So I'm going to say some BS. We'll never know, but it's an interesting strategy for a stock that nobody's really been talking about for a very long time.
Yeah, and we can't make it 2 weeks in a row without talking about Taylor Swift. So
Which
as
happens to be my personal favorite, right? I went to the concert. James is going to death metal concerts, and I had like 50-yard line tickets to Taylor Swift. We're just not the same musically.
no, but we complement each other very well, right? Um,
Exactly.
so they did with that 35% growth. Lyft actually cited and gave some credit to Taylor Swift because of the massive tour across the country and the bump there, along with other stadium events like Beyonce US Open and football games.
Absolutely.
And I think the larger narrative is here is while Lyft is on the right trajectory, they still only control 30% market share in the ride sharing apps. So Uber absolutely has the pole position here with over 70%. Lyft is going to continue to kind of try to chip away.
Sounds great. Well, we'll move on from Lyft. Maybe we can get ourselves a lift to another topic here.
Oh, I see what you did
Ooh,
there.
zinger, zinger, zinger. Interesting phenomena. Target just had a big announcement, James, where they are launching a value brand called Dealworthy that incorporates their Target logo that's really going after the value tier shopper and trying to get them back in the door at Target, given that, inflation's high, people are more conscious of money, everyone fears a recession. What do you think? Is this going to be a boom or bust for Target going after the value shopper that they haven't really went after in probably the past decade?
Uh, Too early to tell, but I'm going to go boom on this, and I'm going to tell you why. One, it's too early to tell because products just started rolling out to stores last week and are going to continue to do so into early 2025. So we got to see this through. They're going to span categories of beauty, personal care, electronics, and apparel and home. And we're talking real entry level. So when we're talking about bargain buyer, we're talking average sales price of $1 to $10, which is projected to be 50% lower than competing brands. So this will be interesting if my question is this more of a retention play for your existing consumer base to kind of drive AOV and kind of just throw in and drive kind of the basket size up, or is this more of a customer attraction strategy? And it's probably both. If you look at comparatively their other private label brands, Smartly, they actually just kicked off a major expansion and reformulation initiative. So they discontinued Smartly, but for Up and Up, they actually just kicked off this major expansion, and it's going to cover 40% or 2,000 products of that portfolio. And Up and Up is, you guessed it, a step up in price point at $10 to $15. So now you have
Sounds right.
deal worthy 1 to 10. You have Up and Up 10 to 15. In private label, which I had no idea, Sean, is big business for Target. Up and Up,
Every think of Kroger, everyone. It is a freaking massive behemoth of a business.
it's 3 billion with the B dollars just Up and Up alone for Target in their total private label business. Total, if we're going for that final, if we're peeling back the onion, going for the last petal on the blooming onion, now I want Outback. We're talking 30 billion annually just for Target private label business.
I bet a lot of that's clothing too, which makes a ton of sense, but that is massive.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Sean, since you were at P&G, how does big CPG think about this, right? You brought up Kroger, you brought up Walmart.
Yep.
It's no secret that these retailers have major private label brands. The FTC was all over Amazon on this 1 or 2 years ago. I mean, how do you guys think about it when they're competing? You're competing for shelf space and trade dollars. And I guess, how's that narrative? Walk us through what that's like to make sure that they're not cannibalizing sales for what you guys are trying to accomplish in store.
Look, I think it's gotten more sophisticated over the years. If you look at private label years ago, like there was no real design aspect of it. There wasn't a ton of branding that was put into it. It was truly the like value-based alternative, your Walmart Great Value brand, where the package just kind of like rips off the leading buyer, right? So people clearly got it was a value brand. I think that shifted. I think Target Up and Up is a great example where you're starting to use the premium equity. With Kroger, I think they have Simple Truth, the premium equity of the retailers at a little bit kind of mid-tier price point for private label. And I think they're starting to take more share. But the reality is there's nothing you can do about it, right? A lot of smaller manufacturers might even make the private label for Target, Kroger, Costco. P&G, we didn't really do that, but there are a lot of category leaders that, they'll get more shelf space for themselves if they agree to also produce the value brand or the store brand for these guys. So I think it's something you just got to deal with, and you got to hope that, I mean, for the past 150 years, probably even longer, we just don't have a lot of data on it, that consumers buy brands, right? Like we buy into the feeling, the identity, the intangible stuff of the brand, and we buy into superior products. Store brands are always going to be that value choice. They're not going to be the branded choice. I think it makes brand owners be more conscious of their price point, the value that they're providing, that the consumer is getting a very superior experience when they buy the product. All those things, can't go away, but I think value brands and private label will continue to take market share. I think the other piece is, when I was at P&G back in kind of the last big recession, when the housing collapsed in 2008 to 2010, P&G had positioned itself into premium and super premium. So we didn't have value brands or mid-tier brands in our roster. Our entire portfolio was on the premium and super premium side of things, and we were crushed. Our stock price, our earnings, everything was crushed from about 2010 to 2016, 17, 18, because we didn't have that breadth of portfolio. Unilever at the time did. They had, across all their categories, they had Degree deodorant, Dove deodorant, Axe, like they had all these spreads across their categories. They performed very well because when people traded down from premium brands, they would trade right into the mid-tier and the value brand, all within the same kind of revenue set for the company. We didn't have that. I think P&G still errs on the premium side, but they've gotten a little bit better. And I think if I were to look at this, Target launched Dealworthy because they've always focused on the 100K plus household. They're the Target and the Walmart shopper really don't overlap that much, but with inflation, with everything else, 100K households are still starting to pull back and trade down to value brands. Everyone's a little bit more conscious. I think that's a big problem for Target's growth. If you look at Target's growth over the past year, they're down 4.5% year over year in revenue, while Walmart is up 4% on a much bigger number. So Target did 109 billion in revenue last year over the last 12 months, and they're down 4%. Walmart did 638 billion in revenue, and they're up 4%. So 4% on that is probably like 25% of Target's total revenue. So maybe not that much, but it's pretty significant. So this to me feels like Target got caught in that thing that P&G got caught into, where they didn't have any value play. Now they're trying to back into it, and it's going to take 4 or 5, 10 years to see if they can get people to catch up and come into the store and break that, hey, we're premium and we're only for 100K plus household mentality. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. I think you called boom. I think I'm going to call bust that the Target shopper is the Target shopper. I don't know if they're going to trade down to Dealworthy. I think they trade down to up and up, but I think it's a completely different shopper. Unless they can get the Walmart shopper and the dollar store shopper into the store and be net new like foot traffic, I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. But I think the other products that Target sells on the shelf is probably too big of a stretch for the Walmart, the dollar store shopper to come in. And, everyone has the joke. You walk in the Target, or your wife or significant other walks in the Target, and they walk out with a $300 bill, and you don't know what happened. You have like 12 items in your cart.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, to your point, Sean, with the 100K household, I mean, the median US household income is 75,000, right? So I think they've either neglected or abandoned a certain subset of consumers, or the reality is some consumers are going to be like shifting their spend. So even those that are above 100K, it's like, does everything need to be premium, or
Right.
do they have their certain staples or their brand affinity that they are non-negotiable that they're going to stick with? But for their trash bags or their hand soap, do they trade
Do they
down
care?
to save some points there?
And
So I see
we
some.
saw that. We had tons of data at P&G that said in inflation and recessionary environments, 100, 200K households still traded down. Even if they didn't have a money problem, it was more of a cultural, psychological thing that they would trade down just because they perceived that times might get tough. And I think that's probably happening right now at Target.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna call a bust on it. I think Dealworthy will probably go the way of the other brand store brand that you had mentioned from them. I bet in 5 years this thing doesn't exist. They're doubling down on up and up, and they'll get back to, we'll come through this tough economic time and they'll be doubling down on $10, $12, $15 deodorants again, like they do with all the other new brands that they launch in the store.
Yeah, that is a fair point. Is this a knee jerk, which a very slow knee jerk reaction just to recessionary times, and if and when we get out of this over the next year or so, again, is it a moot point? So cool.
That's great. Cool. Well, moving on to one more issue, we're going to talk about something I posted about on LinkedIn yesterday, which is Amazon for the first time ever. We've all known this has been going on. James and I kind of work and ran in Amazon agency. We've been seeing this for the past decade, but Amazon for the first time ever just announced that they are heavily, heavily, heavily reliant on Chinese sellers. So in their earnings report, they've never disclosed it. For the first time ever, Chinese sellers made up 50% of their entire Amazon 3P sales, which is an absolutely astounding number, given that this isn't the sales number, but this is the revenue Amazon brings in off of 3P, is about 140 billion. And then another 47 million of that is advertising. So if you just took, roughly 200 million, Chinese sellers are making, or 200 billion, sorry, Chinese sellers are making up about 93 billion of that 200 billion in revenue that Amazon's bringing in. So they are intricately linked. I mean, my guess is that, the Chinese sellers, and there's probably a Chinese e-commerce lobby that is hitting it hard in Washington and hitting it hard in Seattle, making sure that that gravy train doesn't go away. But I was absolutely shocked. I knew it was bad. I didn't know it was this bad. And I would call Chinese sellers on Amazon almost like the US manufacturing moment or the auto industry moment here. Because if you looked at really from 2005 to 2020, you had a lot of US e-commerce entrepreneurs that would go to China, Vietnam, and they would buy product, find really great product, brand it, trademark it, sell it on Amazon, mark it up, make a 20 to 30% profit margin, probably not as much anymore because margins are getting squeezed. And they'd make good lives for themselves. They would sell their brand to aggregators. It was a great thing for the economy. Now, the Chinese manufacturers that have excess capacity coming out of COVID realize that they could just cut out that entire spread, right? Like, why sell to the US distributor or middleman when they could just go direct to consumer and ship it directly into Amazon FBA, which they're doing now. And they can take lower margin because they don't have as high of a requirement, and they can cut out that, the markup and the 20 or 30% margin that the US seller was making. So I view this as kind of the Armageddon moment for Amazon only brand US sellers if this trend continues. We don't know if it will. Obviously, politics plays a big role in it. Let's say the presidency changes and somebody slaps a 50% tariff on Chinese goods, or removes some of the friendly laws that I just learned yesterday from somebody that reached out to me after I posted and said, a lot of these Chinese sellers don't have to pay tariffs getting the goods into the US because they're not trading title of it. But when they sell to a US seller, the seller has to pay a tariff on that good, which is another expense that these Chinese sellers don't have to pay. I also read the same thing happens for Temu and Shein, in that they're spending more money lobbying in Washington than almost any other kind of industry combined to make sure that law is protected. So when big money's at play, I don't know if it's going to go away, but I think the trend is you're going to continue to see what I would call direct from manufacturer selling through e-commerce in the US from China. And it's the same trend of when everything at Walmart started getting made in China and, prices came down. I think it's probably a benefit from the consumer, but it's going to be a lot harder to sift through quality, what's good, what's not. We talked about Stanley a couple weeks ago. Like, does this stuff have lead in it? Like, would you buy toys and let your kids play with them and put them in your mouth? I don't know. If there's not a US entity kind of sitting there and, worried about being sued and making sure everything's up to standard, I'd be a little nervous about it. But James, I don't know. What's your take on the Chinese seller Armageddon?
Yeah, here's how I see this playing out. It's the US-based third-party sellers that, I don't want to say got rich quick or were hoping to, but I feel like there was a trend there, right?
A lot of them did.
there's a few people that kind of create that lifestyle business. It wasn't super competitive. The platform wasn't as sophisticated as it is now. But they built that without really building like a moat or kind of that durability that's required with that brand identity and brand
Mhm.
foundation that maybe big CPG
Yeah,
has.
they didn't build brands, right? They sold trademarked products.
Exactly. And so without the fundamentals of what makes a brand, I think they're going to feel the most friction from this. They don't have a devout consumer base. They don't have these best in class assets, a sound brand identity, and let's talk about war chests here. Um, Advertising revenue is not going down on any marketplace right
No.
now. For all the major retailers, it is going up. So those unit economics and the margin availability is diminishing. And now, if Chinese sellers are able to circumvent these tariffs that you're talking about from a title transfer,
And cut out the middleman, right?
exactly. And now we also are having generative AI for image. Like,
Yeah.
I think those are the individuals that are going to suffer the most.
Yeah.
And I
And
guess
copy, right? Because the telltale sign would be poor English, misspelled words. Now you can have Chat GPT write your copy for you based on a product page that's already written in English. Just rip it right off and throw it in the Chat GPT for a similar product.
right, right. And I think the trend here, I feel like it's interesting that between this and even what we discussed with Target and Dealworthy, a lot kind of, it's not private label per se, but there seems to kind of be this trend as um, consumers are going to shift. They're shifting their spend. Some are pulling back outright, but a lot of it's just shifting. So if it's downgrading certain purchases, but upgrading elsewhere, staying the same, or are they shifting from products to more experiential services? If you try to
Yeah.
buy any type of concert tickets, if we want to go full circle moment, considering we talked about music at the beginning of the show, to now ticket prices are way up, ticket fees are way up. Shows sites are breaking. Ticketmaster can't solve it. Anyways, end of
Yeah.
rant on that. But there's a very consumerism is alive and well in the US. And for those who don't know the exact definition of consumerism, it's a social and economic order in which the goals of many individuals include the acquisition of goods and services beyond those that are necessary for survival or for traditional displays of status, aka keeping up with the Joneses. So while we're all feeling the effects of inflation, I don't think it's going to be until we untether our identity from this, like what we own or these inanimate objects. I don't think it's going to affect the consumer. I think they'll continue to buy. I think the brands or the third party sellers are the ones that pay the price here, literally and figuratively. It'll be kind of an interesting dynamic to see how it plays out over the coming months and years.
Yeah. I think both of it goes back to consumers want stuff as cheaply as possible. Inflation's happening. Target's launching Dealworthy to fill that consumer need. They want goods as cheap as possible to meet whatever need they're looking for. I think Temu, Shein, Amazon or Chinese sellers on Amazon fill the exact same need, right? You can buy things there for 40% of what you would buy at Walmart or in a store because it's coming direct from the factory in China. And the only reason that market exists and is growing is because people are valuing kind of value or lower cash outlay over, quality and some of the branded products. And I think that may shift as consumers shift back to premium brands in the future. But right now, value seems to be king, and Chinese sellers are capitalizing on it. Target's trying to capitalize on it, and I think you'll see a lot of others kind of go that route as well.
Yeah. What do we always say? The three-legged stool of like speed, quality, price. So
Hmm.
clearly, speed is necessary in this need it now society, and then price and or value. So that's kind of that's where we're at.
Agree. All right, so we'll end on a non-news story. So this is just more James with work and life. I mean, I've got 3 kids. From 6 a.m. I'm going to the gym and packing lunches and dropping kids off at school to when I get home, I'm eating dinner and putting kids down to bed until 9 o'clock every night. How do you stay organized throughout the day? Everyone's got a lot going on. You do, I do, most of our listeners do. Like, what tips, tactics, and tools do you use to keep it all together and not drop balls that are being juggled in the air?
Yeah, I think the big thing is you have to have mechanisms and routine in place because chaos is a given, suffering is a given, and you have to make sure that if your tank is full. So first thing I do, I try to get up between 5:30 and 6 before my kids start running in at 6:15 to 6:30. I'll actually pray, journal, and read for a little bit, make sure not look at my phone, just kind of tend to like my headspace and make sure I'm kind of really set up for the day. And then from there, my boys, we really try to like do breakfast together, get them ready, and we want to really focus on having a good launch and a good land for the day. So I want to make sure I'm setting them off, which isn't always possible, right? Kids have meltdowns, they don't want to go to
Yeah.
school. Like I don't want to paint this picture that's, perfect when sometimes it's just chaos. But what I find is when I take that extra time to kind of tend to my tank, I can now then pour from a fuller cup, and give that to them and set them up for their day. Once I drop them off for school, gym, non-negotiable. That gets me any like the stress and everything kind of worked out. My mind is more active, and then I can hit the desk from there, and really focus. And I really I'm in sales, and what I really look at is for my existing customer base, what is it that they need? Is there anything that needs addressed with the people that are currently paying the bills, right? They're the people we're the trusted partner. They need to make sure they're taken care of first. Who are the people that are kind of mid-evaluation that have any outstanding requests? What can I do to add value to them? Not just ask, hey, just following up, but can I look at a competitor for them? Can I pull data? What can I do to really make sure that I'm inserting that deposit? And then from there, making sure, from a pipeline generation standpoint, what am I doing? What's on the event circuit? Who are brands I think would be really great partners I can go to? Closing out for the day, again, we try to do dinner at the table as best as possible each night. Sometimes, again, that's them getting up and running around multiple times. It's not a perfect dinner, but we make sure we kind of check in on each other's day. We do some wild time, which is I highly recommend doing this, especially if you have any boys. We play some music, like they dance, they like wrestle, like we'll throw a football like inside because it's cold. Just try to exert all that, and then we'll calm down, flashcards, reading, and then get them ready for bed. So I think
That's great.
long story long, really focus on your launch and your land, not just for your kids, but for yourself. So that way you're not pouring from an empty cup. Because if you don't fill yours up, like you can't
Yep.
give them everything that you have.
Yeah. I mean, I can't state it enough. I think routine's perfect, right? Like I get up, I work out every morning, take my daughter to school, get coffee, usually we'll journal every day, and really write down like what are the like 3 things that I really need to get done for the day, that if I got nothing else done, I'd feel satisfied by the end of the day that those 3 things were taken care of. And then, I mean, I've had ADD my entire life, so it's easy to get distracted by our phones and pings on your email, everything else. So what I've really found is this method called the Pomodori method, and I'll kind of hold it up here. I've got an app on my phone called Focus Keeper, which I am not affiliated with, and it's a free app. But the whole theory is, deep work and focused work. So you'll do 4 sessions of 25 minutes where you kind of write what tasks you want to get accomplished in those 25 minutes. It could be like, hey, I want to get the inbox 0 in the next 25 minutes. You let it go, and then you get a 5-minute break in between each of them. So in the 5 minutes, you can do whatever the hell you want, right? You can go scroll Twitter, LinkedIn, you can text your friends, you can get on a group chat, do whatever you want, watch a video. And then you get back to it for another 25 minutes. So every morning I try to get a good block of 4 or 5 of those 25-minute kind of Pomodori sessions where I can plow through as much as possible. And then in the afternoon, I try to do things that don't take as much brain power. So meetings, catch-ups, phone calls, things like that. Knowing that hopefully in the morning I got the 1, 2, or 3 things done that I really needed to get done for the day. But yeah, that's my tip and tactic. I think everything James said was great. Like I'm not going to beat a dead horse with the stuff that we do with our kids, but all great advice. And I think, we're not fudging earnings reports. We're harping on value brands, and we're trying to stay organized here. So I think that's probably, the end of our episode today. Any parting thoughts that you have for the audience, James?
No, I mean, I would say being the sales and marketing guy, there's no reason. or wait, we're going to flush any reports. I do not have a CFA. I am not a controller or CFO, nor will I be anytime soon. Now, Sean, I guess, kind of runs the P&L for his company, so maybe we'll have to watch out for him. But
yeah, you never know. I'll try not to do anything sketchy. All right, so that ends. We've got a nice little outro for you today. We're getting a little bit more legitimate every single time.
Look at this.
Woo, woo. All right,
I haven't seen this yet. I'm excited.
Until next time.